everybody, and welcome back. For our next question, I'd like to go to a student from Dowdell School. If you would stand up and wait for the microphone.
Parks and outdoor spaces within Westmorland and Furness footprint. Although free and accessible outdoor gyms and playgrounds are fantastic when first installed, how do you ensure these are well maintained for future users? And how can people notify you if there are issues?
Thank you very much. There's two parts to that question there. First, can I ask Alison Hatch for her thoughts?
Thank you. We've already touched upon active lifestyles already this afternoon, and I think it's just worth acknowledging that play and active lifestyles start as toddlers and young people and playing in the park. So the council absolutely recognises the importance of parks as making sport and outdoor activity part of everyday lifestyle. If you don't start when you're young, it won't then continue on through lives. So in terms of Westmorland and Furness, we've got 155 play facilities that are maintained by the council, plus we've got playgrounds managed by parish and town councils. So I'm just going to look at my notes to tell me the numbers because I couldn't remember those off the top of my head. But in Eden, or the former Eden area, we've got 36 play parks, 1 skate park and 6 muggers. I presume you all know what those are, multi-use games areas. In South Lakes, former district area, we've got 59 play parks, 3 skate parks, 9 muggers, 1 pump track and 8 outdoor gyms. So the South Lakes area is doing quite well. And in the Furness area, we've got 29 play parks, 7 skate parks and 6 muggers. So you can see that the area is really well resourced, but that comes, as you highlighted in your question, with a maintenance liability, and there's a need for the council to continue to invest and look after those parks for the benefit of our communities. So in terms of our priorities and how we look after that, we want to make sure all our parks are safe, inclusive and accessible. We recognise that they all need to be environmentally and financially sustainable, and the council does make a financial commitment every year to being able to undertake some repairs, but we also recognise that we can't always do that on our own, so we work very closely with town and parish councils. We work with people who are willing to volunteer their time to look after those parks, but equally we take the opportunity to apply for and seek to secure funding from other sources, whether that's through developer contributions, other government grants, or through funding raising efforts working with local communities. But our objective is always to try and have community engagement in looking after those parks, because if they are valued by the local community, they're more likely to be better looked after, and therefore the maintenance cost associated with it is reduced. In terms of who to contact, if you want to report anything on a particular park, there's an email address of opservices@westmorlandandfurness.gov.uk, but I'm sure we can provide that email address should you wish to be able to use it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to confirm, do you think these grants should be used to maintain these parks rather than to build new ones?
I think it's for both.
Brilliant. Alison, can I ask you to comment on the environmental aspect of maintaining these parks?
I think it's like whenever you start any kind of project, you should have your environmental hat on and think very carefully about what kind of materials are being used and what kind of energy use is being used to create them. But equally, it's about maintenance of them. If you're using paint them and it's splintering off and all sorts of things, then that's not good design. So I think the designers of any kind of product now have the environmental impact of their products right at the forefront, or they wouldn't survive, which is a good thing. So whenever they're being designed up or new ones put in, then that should be considered. And equally where, because if they're not close to where people can access them, and people are going to travel, how are they going to travel? So, you know, you've got to think about the environmental impact assessment.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else from the panel like to comment on this? Okay, so the second aspect of the question, which I think was, how can people notify you? I think we had the email for that, which we can definitely broadcast for you guys later. But would anyone else like to comment on that? Are there any comments from the audience related to this question? Okay, so our next question comes from Ava from Ulverston. If you would stand up and wait for the microphone. I live with a condition which has been raised in Parliament recently called pons-ponder's, which the NHS currently are not able to support with seeing a doctor or to receive treatment for. I have to travel all the way up to Birmingham to see a professor privately, and my friend with the same condition has to go to London. My question is, how can the healthcare system in the UK better support patients with conditions which aren't treated via the NHS fairly? Thank you very much. Katrina, can I invite you to speak on this?
Yeah, sure. So I'll make a start on that one. So I think it's been in the news a lot recently about how some of the major challenges we've got in our NHS system, and some of the changes that are needed, and a lot of those relate to money. They also relate to the fact that we've got a population that's largely getting older and where people aren't as healthy as they used to be. So part of the solution here is, for some conditions, is about prevention and how we can support people to be more healthy and active, and live longer lives, better lives that are healthier. When it comes to the treatment of specific conditions, there's a really difficult balance sometimes between making sure that you've got specialists who really understand the condition who are available to treat it, with how many people have got that condition, and therefore how many different sites that you can make that treatment available at. But I think one of the shifts that the Secretary of State has talked about in the NHS is about from analogue to digital, and I think actually where we can, trying to make more services available digitally and in other ways for people to access them is really important, to make some of that really specialist treatment more widely available in a way that works for patients and is really cost effective. But there are no easy solutions. We've got a bit of a mix really of people that there being better diagnosis of some complex conditions, which is a good thing. There are lots more different treatments available, but often those come at a higher cost as well. And as I say, we've got a sort of growing burden of ill health in the population as well. So lots of really tricky things to balance, but I think really important that the NHS and others are listening to the needs of patients, and that we're trying to make that really scarce resource that we've got go as far as possible, and that for things that can be prevented, we do our best to prevent them so that we can put the focus on those things that can't.
So, what can young people do on an individual level to help this change happen?
So I think a really big part of it is actually thinking about all the things that you can do to keep yourself and your family and those around you as healthy as possible. There are lots of things, lots of conditions that we can't prevent, but there are lots that we can. And you know, thinking about the decisions you make and how you live your life to do that is really important. But also making your voices heard about what's important to you and how you want to see NHS resource and taxpayers' money used is also really important as well.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else from our panel like to talk on this issue? No? Are there any more comments from the audience? Yep, will you stand up and wait for a microphone?
With like the process of diagnosis, does this also link into neurodivergency in also getting like diagnosed with certain stuff and also getting those medication as well? Because there's sort of shortage medication for like certain neurodivergency, so does that also link into it?
Yeah, I think it definitely does in terms of the, that's one of the areas where we've seen absolutely massive increase in demand on the NHS. Some of it is about how we think about things as a society and how we want to deal with things, and again, how we want to prioritise. But equally, I think how we live and work with each other and build our society in a way that is acceptance and accepting of neurodivergence and works in a way that works for everyone, not for kind of a narrower tranche of society.
So what would you say to young people who are having difficulties with diagnosis?
I'm not sure I've got enough knowledge about the specific bits of the NHS that deal with that at the moment to be able to give a good answer to that, so I'd rather not give information that's incorrect, so I will leave that one if that's okay.
No problem at all. Are there any comments from anyone else on the panel who would like to comment on the issue?
Yeah, it's really just echoing something that Katrina said, because I think it is incredibly important for all of us. You know, I'm not an expert on neurodiversity, but it is something that we've worked in our organisation to raise everybody's awareness and understanding of, so that we can treat each other better, and we can treat the people that we work with better. And I'm also involved in a charity, and they certainly do know a lot about this. And one of the things that's quite clear from this is that while there are some things that are, do need some form of medical treatment, we shouldn't over-medicalise everything to do with neurodiversity, because we are all different. And a lot of this, as Katrina says, is about actually being more understanding of each other and more accommodating, and all of us finding ways to work together better and make the most of everybody's talents.
Thank you very much. Are there any more comments from the audience surrounding this? Oh, two more over there. Is it on? You know when you're saying about like just being well and just health in general, it's quite hard obviously when you're like it's at school and you like got a lot of appointments. How do you how you meant to juggle school with them also saying like your attendance is dropping, then the NHS also saying like you need to attend your appointments.
So I think that's something that the situation for every young person is going to be different, and I think that's something that each young person needs to talk to their school about and work out the best way to manage it, because the reason you've been given those appointments with the NHS is because they are important to your long-term and sometimes your short-term health too. But equally your education is important. So it is a really difficult balance to strike, but I think we've got to find ways of finding things that work for each individual, and there won't be a one-size-fits-all.
Thank you very much. Are there any more responses from the panel for this question? Okay, I think there was one more person next to you. Had your hand up as well.
Linking back to Chloe's point on neurodivergency, a lot of the time when people are going for a diagnosis or they need something like physio or like just etc., the waiting lists for that are very, very long, which can cause a lot of uncertainty around what's actually wrong with the person that's waiting for that diagnosis or waiting for that certain treatment that they need. And when going through the NHS, it's a lot easier to honestly go private because you obviously have to pay for it, but it's quicker, whereas a lot of people can't afford that. And through the NHS, the waiting list is so long, which can have an effect on the person who's waiting. So could you say that could be improved, or are there any ways to maybe slow down, speed up, like when people getting diagnoses for whatever they need to kind of take that edge or nerve away from what's actually going on?
So yeah, really good question, really important point, and I think it's widely known now, it's been in the media a lot, hasn't it, that waiting lists have got really long, particularly for some conditions. There's some of that actually is just about more money needing to go in to fix some of the problems. There's some of it about changing how those waiting lists work, where things can be done differently, and I think we'll probably see NHS plans in the next 6 months or so that are all about focusing on that issue. I think there are some examples of things that we can do locally as well that try to address that issue. So there's some work that we're just starting to do in Barrow at the moment that's looking at where people are on a waiting list for things like back pain, for instance, or any kind of musculoskeletal issues. There's something wrong with their shoulder or their elbow or something, potentially. If there are things where exercise can help with those conditions, then what we're trying to do is making sure that people have got access to some support to access the gym and leisure facilities and learn to do exercises in a way that is manageable for them but can also help and improve their condition while they're waiting to see a specialist.
Thank you very much. Before we move on, I would just like to ask about what you as a council are doing to ensure this healthy lifestyle which you talk about in order to prevent disease.
Okay, so so the bit we do as a council, I guess, is really about trying to think about that prevention side of things and how we can both make sure that we have places to live that help keep us healthy. So thinking about what we want our town centres and roads and pathways and things to look like in the future, and really making sure that we are thinking not just about people driving around in cars, but how you can travel actively, for instance, whether that be walking or by bike or through other means as well. So there's some of the stuff that's really about very long-term prevention and population. There's other things that are about services that we provide right from when someone's born. So we are responsible for making sure that there are health visitors in place, for instance, and school nursing services, so that there's support from young people right the way through birth, through to when they leave school. And then there's some specialist services that we work on as well, so things like sexual health services, drugs and alcohol services. One of the really big areas of work for us at the moment is about smoking. So we've still got really high numbers of people smoking. It can sometimes feel like that's an issue that's come and gone and been dealt with, but we've actually got just over 10% of our population overall in Westmorland and Furness who currently smoke. But that varies across the area, so in Barrow it's about 20%, for instance. And actually that's something that's really, if we can support people to stop smoking, that can make a massive difference to their health in the longer term. So we are working to put new services in place and extra services in place that provide more support for people to stop smoking. Colleagues Fee and Laura are in the room, I think, at the back of the room with a stand, and we've got information about all those types of services that we provide. So we've got a dual role really. Some of it is about some of those more specialist services, but other elements are about actually how can we just create the environment that means people can live healthily.
Thank you very much. You've done a lot of answering for this question. I really appreciate that. Okay, I think we're moving on now to what might be our final question. So for our last question, would I invite this person to stand up to speak for it, who is Ainsley from Whalley School.
As a group of young people with hopefully bright futures ahead of us, we would like to ask the panel, what drew you to your job, our role, and what do you most enjoy about it?
Right, so who would like to go first to answer that?
What brought me to the police service 20 years ago is completely different to why I'm in the job now. 20 years ago, I was younger, I'm from Cumbria, born and bred here, my family and friends are here, this is my community. I wanted to help the community by actually catching criminals and driving cars fast as well. There's also part of it. So that's why I joined the police, and I joined the police just to catch the baddies. And as Alison mentioned before about is seeing people, because of their whole life environment or anything like that, repeated, I started seeing the trend. So when I first started, the young adults I was arresting, 5-6 years later, I was arresting their children. 5 years later, I was arresting their children. And I just thought, this is wrong. it's something has gone wrong here. So when I seen the opportunity for what I'm doing now for the more the intervention and getting in, I took this role, and I just like to actually see it, because 99% of people don't become criminals, don't want to become criminals, they become it because of different things which have gone on in their life, through all their childhood experiences, through the trauma. Everyone here has obviously experienced some form of trauma one way or another in their life, and each person's different, so that's what we're wanting to do. Look at each person individually to try and actually change that, put them on a better trajectory. And it does work, as I said, not, I know we said about the reduction in reinventing everything, but it's just the emails I get from some parents. I had one early this week just saying, thanks for the work you've done with, or mentioned the child's name, just saying it's like a different person, it's like we've got our child back, and it's just actually seeing things like that what makes me think, yeah, this is great. I've got 3 children of my own, and I want the rest of the children in Cumbria to be treated the same way I treat my children, from the police perspective, and that's why we hopefully make things better. For stop the reoffending, change that child's life, but eventually that will also mean it will reduce the crime rate on overuse.
Thank you very much. Who would like to go next?
Try to put this in and then work back. So, after leaving school, I went and studied town planning, and what drew me to town planning was just understanding how places work. And what's been really interesting in the discussion today is that a lot of the questions have been about bringing buildings back into use, looking after our spaces, creating places that feel safe, that people want to spend time in, creating places where you can live active lifestyles, where you can walk and cycle to work and feel safe doing that, and the infrastructure's there to support you doing it. So that's where I started out, and then I started my career in private sector. But what I soon found there was you were advising people on things to do, but you weren't actually involved in doing it yourself. So then I made the decision to move into the public sector, and then have since gone on to be involved in developing all sorts of plans and strategies for trying to improve places where people live and work. And as Assistant Chief Executive of the Council, my role is about setting the corporate strategy about what the Council chooses to do with its resources and how it is looking to create the environment that enables communities and people who live and work here to live their best lives. Now, we don't always get all of that right, and we certainly don't have the amount of resources that we would like to have to do all of those things, but that absolutely lies at the heart of what the Council is trying to do for its communities.
Thank you very much. Katrina, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the things that I was always fairly sure on is that I wanted to work in the public sector rather than the private sector. So always really interested in how to can work with people and places and making a difference on those things. Probably more interested in that than kind of selling things or making profits. Not that there's anything wrong with that at all, but just not where my interests were. But I think there was probably a point where I could have ended up doing any kind of role in the public sector, and I probably ended up a little bit where I am by accident at some point, or by just decisions that seemed like the right one at the time, rather than having a really clear plan. But when I look back now, I think the things that public health is all about are the things that are really important to me. So things like how do we, things like social justice and how we make sure we create a more equal society where everyone's got the opportunity to thrive and live the best life possible is really important. And I love the fact that with a subject like health and public health, everything impacts on our health, and our health is influenced by pretty much everything in life. It means you can be really nosy and kind of get involved in anything that you fancy getting involved in, really, because there's always a link to health. So that comes with loads of variety, and there's a sort of definition of public health that says it's the art and science of improving and protecting the health of the population. And I think that bit that it's a bit of arty stuff, it's a bit of sciencey stuff, that combination really works for me because it means every day is different.
Thank you very much. Alison, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I've actually only been working for CDEC for 3 months, but I'm a trained primary primary school teacher and I've been a head teacher for the past 18 years. So I kind of live and breathe education. And one of the things that I'm particularly passionate about is the voice of the child, and so is the United Nations, because you have rights. So in my career, one of the things that I've been very focused on, especially as a head teacher, because with headship comes power, and with power comes responsibility, and ensuring that the children and the young people that are in your care get the very best education whilst thriving. So that word is very critical to me. And it's important that you learn about those issues in the world that affect you. And I can clearly see in this audience that you're very passionate about things like poverty, like your community and what's happening with it, like health and well-being, and like your rights to be able to have your health diagnosed if that's the way that you're going down. But unfortunately, the public sector is under a lot of pressure at the moment. And to be honest, it always will do. But for you as young people, it's important you get the very best education so that you can learn about the world and be empowered to do something about it, so that you can not just make a difference to your own life, but to the lives of others. And that's not just here and now in Barrow or wherever your school is, it's globally. So it's CDEC, and coming out of headship and working for CDEC, we are absolutely passionate about acting locally, but thinking globally. And you'd be amazed at what kind of impact collectively we can have on that. So I'm just going to finish by saying that at CDEC we want to work with young people of Cumbria in ensuring that you do continue to have a voice and that it's listened to. And in June of this year we're going to have the Youth Climate Summit here in Barrow. So if teachers in the room, if you want your school to be involved, please leave me with your email address and I will be getting in touch with you to discuss that a bit further, so we can, include as many young people in this climate summit in June as possible. And also young people, if you want to learn more about it, you can come on our stand and there's a QR code that you can use if you are allowed your phones today, and complete a form. And we would love to have this as the biggest event ever in Cumbria for young people. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, Suzanne?
Right, yeah, this is an interesting one. So I never intended to work for the Chamber. About 20 years ago, my friend asked me to come in and help her out for a couple of weeks, and I'm still here, and now I'm running it. And my old boss used to tell everybody that he'd never interviewed me. I just turned up one day and wouldn't go away. So it just shows you how things happen. But just to highlight, as a chamber, so we work with businesses to help them to start and to help them to grow and be successful. And we provide opportunities for them to meet with each other. And we run lots of events. And we also undertake research and represent the interests of business, whether that's with people like the councils locally, or indeed with the government, or working together with other chambers, not just nationally but internationally as well. So it really is very varied, and I think that's one of the things that I really like about it. But the most important thing for me is that every day I feel that I'm making a difference and doing something worthwhile, and I think that is tremendously important if that's something that you can possibly achieve in a job. And it's sort of a bit of a sort of culmination, I think. I did a degree in economics and I worked mostly in industry, but in a number of other things as well. And this role just seemed to have sort of brought everything together in a really cohesive way. So I do consider myself incredibly lucky in that, because that's not something that everybody manages to achieve. So I think the last thing I'd like to say on that vein really is that a career isn't a once and for all choice. You don't have to set